So there hasn't really been anybody in the room that's sort of shared a personal story. I am a dual citizen. I call myself an accidental American. I was born in Hartford, Connecticut. Both my parents are Canadian. I lived in Hartford, Connecticut for 6 months of my life, and I am in this mess. So I know there's all kinds of people that grew up in the US. 6 months of my life, and my husband and I are planning for our retirement. We're very close to that. I have a situation where my husband has a professional corporation, and I've been getting paid dividend income for years. So it's almost out of the question for me to even consider complying, because I would just owe an astronomical amount. So I'm having my Clint Eastwood moment here by just sharing my story. So I know there's other people in the room that have personal stories like Calgary 411 and some of the other stories, but yeah, I just wanted to share that I'm one of those people that Peter was talking about. So hasn't been fun for the last year and a half, and so far I've chosen to bury my head in the sand. Not sure what I'm going to do tomorrow, but for the moment, that's where I'm standing, and it's a crapshoot.
Well, you know, courage is proceeding in the face of fear. I mean, anybody who's involved in this, it's definitely courageous. But one comment I have on your description is that, unless it was lost on you, I mean, you're living in the most responsible way that any Canadian family can. The most responsible way. You're doing all the things that the tax advisors are telling you to do, right down to the penny, creating the Canadian-controlled private corporation, doing the income splitting by having, you know, I mean, it's unbelievable. So here we have a woman, a family, who's just living their life in the most responsible way, number one. Number two, I might add, living their life completely in accordance with what Canadian policy is in terms of proper retirement objectives and means. And these are the people who are most susceptible to maximum punishment. And in this case, based on being, nobody has any choice where they're born, based on being born in a certain geographical jurisdiction. I bet you don't remember anything about that. You probably don't remember F-bars from that first 6 months or anything else for that matter. And it's just impossible for me to see that somehow this is not some gross human rights abuse. It is just impossible for me to see it the more of these stories that I hear.
But I want to say this, Sinclair and John, where do we go from here? I would like to think that this is FATCA Forum #1. Do either of you have any thoughts on that? I'll hand that back to you, Sinclair. And John, can you speak to that?
Yeah, well, I think that this is FATCA Forum #1. There are people who express an interest in FATCA Forums #2, 3 in different places. Absolutely. We are involved in education. We are involved in motivation. We are involved in, and this is where I know nobody better than you, Dorian, to get the right rhetoric, the right language, to get people inspired and get the word out. It's funny, I didn't even realize this till, it's funny, after a conversation with you, Dorian, was when the Department of Finance put out its notice, wanting people's views on FATCA. I mean, I've been thinking about this for a while, so I knew what FATCA was. But I don't see any reason why anybody in the whole wide world would know what FATCA was. And therefore, the invitation for submissions on the part of the government was, I believe, disingenuous. I mean, if you don't know what it is you're supposed to offer submissions for, I don't see how they can be of any value whatsoever. So my personal opinion of this is that, in fact, the Department of Finance has not actually invited any submissions on this issue at all. I mean, certainly the Progressive Canadian Party will be putting together an important one, and others have. But I think what's important is to get out and get people to, to get those submissions in. I mean, I think the more stories, the better. But I think what's extremely important here is that You know, I mean, I think it's, with very few exceptions in this room today, I think that everybody here probably has had, you know, as a U.S. person or was a U.S. person or something like that. And this needs to be understood and marketed as a Canadian issue, an issue affecting Canadians, of which perhaps U.S. persons are perhaps more affected than others. But that seems to me to be the general way to go. I think, you know, certainly the speakers today, I had no idea how this is going to turn out, absolutely none. But I've got to say that the speakers, without exception, exceeded my wildest expectations. And I think that we've got a tremendous documentary, and I'm certain that Peter Dunn will be enthusiastic about helping to get this put together and get the word out. And I think that perhaps what we ought to do is agree that we have, in fact, established an institution, perhaps, called FATCA Forum. And the goal is to educate and continue to spread the word and absolutely put the fear of God in the current government that if they do have the temerity to sign this IGA with the IRS, that it will be the end of them as a government.
I'm grateful indeed for those comments. I just want to say that I'm so glad that Erich is here. And I remember, and I've forgotten your first name. Adriana was the candidate federally in that riding for... Can we give Adriana a round of applause? What a joy to have you with us. And I just want to say this, that Erich, you have come at the right time with that petition. And Erich's concern, along with James's stated concern, was what if they do something, they capitulate or cave between now and when the House meets again?
I don't believe they're that stupid, Dorian.
Well, I'm hoping not. But
I mean, you know, they do a lot of stupid things.
I'm hoping not. But you know what? They've done pretty stupid things recently. I mean.
Well, then I think. I mean, first of all, as a great parliamentarian and former British Prime Minister said, then it's the end of the beginning.
Yes.
You know, that's all. And then clearly.
Well, and you know, hopefully that's not going to be the case. But
I don't think it's going to be the case. But if it's the case, then it has to go, you know, directly to, you know, it has to go to Parliament. Now, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. But I mean, we know how dictatorial the current government is. But if nothing else, it will certainly be an opportunity to expose the way they're, you know, running the government and running the country. And I'd like to think that if articulated properly, that will be a factor. This is, by the way...
Now, did you say factor or factor?
Well, I tried to say factor. It probably sounded like FATCA.
No, I'm just kidding.
At this point...
But before you go on, I just was going to ask if Erich and the Honourable Sinclair Stevens wouldn't mind sharing with us briefly what they plan to do. Could we start with you, Sinclair? Your next step is to get an official, like we have taken these people at their word, and I agree with you, it's been a disingenuous invitation because they're just counting on the fact nobody heard the invitation, and it's miraculous that with your help and Sinclair's, we're here today. But Sinclair, could you just tell the group what your next step is as leader of our party, and then I was hoping that you, Erich, would tell us what you're going to do with the petition. So if you wouldn't mind, Sink, thank you.
Yes, well, thanks, and I don't want to delay you any longer, but the main thing that I would like to suggest is that we should remember we're not in the age of the 1930s that I related to you. We're not in the age of the 1960s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. We're in a totally new age dominated by the internet. And we must make good use of all that that entails, including the smartphones. That is the way that we communicate what we've discussed today, and I hope some of the material that is now on film could be adjusted suitable to get on the internet, because that is the way to bypass the traditional press, who are pretty well in the pockets of the establishment, and I think you will be amazed the cumulative effect that will happen if you alert so-called American citizens who are living in Canada of the possible danger that is coming It's time they got activated. The internet gives us a way to reach them. Thank you.
Yes, and as a great American president once said, how did he put it? If you can't get your elected representatives to see the light, you get the voters to make them feel the heat.
Yes. If Peter could just tell us, not Peter, sorry, Erich, what he's going to do, and then I guess, Sinclair, you're going to be putting a submission in to the government based on this forum too. Thank you, Erich.
Sure. Well, we have 23, and I'll pick up a 24th and 5th signature shortly. So we have enough to be an official petition. So I will deliver that to Elizabeth May within the following week, and that'll be presented when Parliament sits again at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, I'll be gathering the information from some of the other attendees, put together basically a bit of a background or some bullet points, and we'll see if we can put out an official press release from the Green Party in the next week or two. Should be able to do that. I can draft one up, and we just have to go through our various channels. And that will go through our website. It goes out on the wire services, and we can promote it through Isaac Brock Society, et cetera. All these things. It's good to have more official statements to link to, and I will see if Elizabeth can include this as one of the things she mentions in her end of year interviews on CBC TV and CTV in the next following week and a half. There's so many things to mention. It's hard to say how which issues we get in, but we'll get the points to her and try and have that mentioned. And then the petition we can look forward to coming in January, and also an op-ed. We'll see if she can get an op-ed placed in the newspaper covering this topic as well. And a couple of the other people are working on that. We'll come together and get some key points. So if there's a follow-up posted from this convention, from this today's information session. It'd be great if we can include some of that information as well.
Fantastic. Does that bring us to the end of the day?
John, can I just say something?
Yes.
I don't know what was covered here because I came very late. I asked Erich to come in, and I know that our finance guy is looking into it, so hopefully we'll have a statement out from the Green Party. Just on a personal note, I do know I have somebody fairly close to me who I won't mention who they are because it sounds like it's somewhat dangerous. She's trying to strip herself of American citizenship. Like you, she was born in the United States to Canadian parents, lived there for a very short time, came here. Her situation is kind of funny because she got married fairly late in life, and her husband already owned their family property. He's paid for it entirely out of his own funds, but they now jointly own it. And as they're approaching retirement, she's realizing that if something were to happen to her, her Canadian husband, who was no connection to the United States, would have to pay half of the cost of their home to the United States. So this is, you can see this as a sort of naked grab of the Canadian property. And it's, I think there's real concerns here. And part of it is also this sort of double taxation, where different countries try to tax fairly in one way or another. And as long as you're following one set of rules, you're okay. But if you have to try to comply to two different sets of rules, then you end up being taxed twice. And it's not really fair to have every other country work on a residence basis and have one country say we're going to tax residents and citizens and tax for all of the things that they aren't taxed for in other countries because they're taxed in other ways. So I think there's some real concerns here, and it really needs work in order to bring it into line and make it fair. I'm not saying I don't want any cooperation between countries. I think we do need some cooperation.
Not this kind.
But not this kind. This is obviously going way, way overboard. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, I think, to get back to the lady seated in the back there, I mean, this is an example of doing everything right in one country. Like 150% compliance, planning everything, and seeing, what kind of punishment, that brings, from the other. It's an incredibly difficult situation for people. I always, even though I can't use YouTube very well, I think it's a great repository for songs. Any of you remember Canadian band, The Original Cast? Anybody remember the movie Billy Jack? Okay, you might remember this song, and I came across it the other day, and I was trying to find the right version. I think there's a lot of applicability to what the U.S. is trying to do, and I'm wondering if you would agree.
Long ago, about a kingdom on a mountain and the valley folk below. On the mountain was a treasure buried deep beneath a stone, and the valley people swore they'd have it for their very own. Go ahead and hate your neighbor, go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven, justify it in the end. While created trumpets blowing, come the judgment day, on the bloody morning after. One tin soldier rides away. So the people of the valley sent a message up the hill, asking for the buried treasure, tons of gold for which they'd kill. Came an answer from the kingdom, with our brothers we will share all the secrets of our mountain, all the riches buried